Hello, everybody, and this is Mrs. Boudreau here. We are going to be taking notes today on narrative and expository writing. So you're going to fill in these guided notes. Your notes are going to look similar to this, but yours will have times on them, so you'll know when to pause. Pause as you hear the answers. I recommend splitting your screen so that you can see. So if I hold down my window button and hit the left or right arrow, and then I just take this and slide it over, I have it side by side with my notes. So with the video, so you can do things as they go. If you want it big again, you just hit the button right here. I am going to start the presentation now. I just wanted to make sure we knew how to do that. So today we're going to talk about narrative and expository writing. Before you write, you need to know what it's asking of you. What are you being asked to do? If you know the different types of writing, then it's going to make it easier to know how to write. So the first one we're going to talk about is narrative. Notice my notes are similar to your notes. Fill them in as we go. It's writing that tells a story. So it has a beginning, middle, and an end. It has characters. Those are the people in the story. It has setting. That's where and when the story takes place. It has a plot, that sequence of events that we've been talking about in class. When you hear the word narrative, it sounds like narrator. And who's the narrator? The narrator is the one who tells the story. So narratives always tell a story. It can be fiction, or it can be nonfiction, as long as it's telling a story. When you're preparing to write a narrative, you're going to use a story style organizer. So it's going to follow kind of the plot diagram idea. You're going to have a beginning and a middle and an end. And you're going to make sure you have all the elements of a story listed here. When you're filling yours out, right, it helps you map out your ideas before you begin writing. So the exposition and the rising action are going to be mainly in the beginning. Some of the rising action and the climax are going to be in the middle, maybe a little of the falling action, and then the falling action and conclusion will be in the end. So you're just going to bullet. No complete sentences here. You don't want to rewrite the whole story. You're making yourself a map. An organizer is a map. So you're just saying, okay, this is where my character's starting. This is where they're going to go. Sometimes when I fill them out, I even start at the end. This is how I'm going to end. This is how I'm going to begin, and then how do I get to the middle? So the nice thing about an organizer is you can jump around, whereas it's harder to do that when you're writing. Now, the other side of this is expository writing. This is when you give facts, you're explaining, you're informing. So you have a thesis or statement, you list the facts, you explain them, you use text evidence, all right? Very, very much so a type of writing where you inform, describe, explain. This is when the majority of your school writing, right? Like, I have to prove this point. I have to show that the author said this too. I have to give evidence. It's not just my opinion. That's expository writing. So when you're doing expository writing, you use an evidence-based style organizer. So it allows for the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. Each body paragraph explains a piece of information. So we've been talking about races. When we write short answers, you can expand that. Right, your restate is the intro. You give your thesis, what you're talking about in the introduction. Your ACE, your ACE, your answer, cite, and explain is when you explain each point. So this is what I'm talking about. Now let me give you the details in each body paragraph. And then your S is your conclusion. You summarize what you're talking about. So how are the two types of writing different? When you're reading a prompt, you want to say, what's it asking me to do? Is it asking me to entertain? Then it's a narrative. Is it asking me to inform? Then it's an expository. Is the focus on character, motivation, goal, or is the focus on facts, right? Remember, story always equals narrative. Inform, explain always equals expository, always. So narrative, you're saying to yourself, am I continuing a story? Am I telling a story? Am I changing the perspective of a story? Expository doesn't need evidence. Am I explaining something? Do I have to prove it? If you have to prove it, it's expository. If you're giving a story and can be creative, it's narrative. So what type of writing is needed for this prompt? You're going to highlight these answers on your notes. So write an essay that explains the article and the poem that portrayed the blizzards of 1888. So it's telling you to write an essay. It's telling you to explain. And you have to give evidence from both an article and a poem. So is it going to be A, narrative, or B, expository? Mark it on your notes. Next question, number 2. Tell the short story The Other Side from Annie's perspective. Include important plot events. So it tells me to tell a short story. It tells me to give a new perspective. It tells me to include plot events. Is that going to be narrative, A, or B, expository? Pause me, answer it, and then come back. What type of writing is needed for this prompt? Short stories such as Rogue Wave often present characters that take bold actions in order to overcome great challenges. Write an alternative ending for this story. So it's talking about characters. It's talking about a story. I have to change the ending. An alternative ending means a new ending. So if I have to change the ending to a story, is that A, narrative, or B, expository? And then your last one, you're going to write a 3-paragraph character analysis of Mrs. Stevenson. Support your analysis with examples of her actions as expressed in the dialogue and stage directions. Be sure to show how her actions affect the drama's plot. So I have to analyze a character, but I have to give examples from the text. I have to say how her actions affected the drama's plot. So I'm not telling a story. I'm explaining elements of a story. I'm informing my reader about elements of a story. So is that A, narrative, or B, expository? So you're going to be working more and more on what's the difference, because all year long, when you're given a writing prompt, you need to say to yourself, what kind of writing am I doing? So I know what kind of organizer to use and how to attack it. So good luck. Hope it went well. Ask for help if you need it.